if I read the board correctly, we're doing time, frequency, and intensity. So, what do you guys think any of that has to do with health? Any ideas? Nothing, okay.
No, the sicker you are, the more you need it. The more frequency, the more intensity.
Yeah, definitely. What we're gonna look at is, how did we actually get sick? And what does it actually take for us to get healthy? And even more than that, how do we define sick as sick? What is sick? Now, the problem that we have in our culture is that we've been taught that symptoms equal sickness. That's not necessarily true. I'll give you an example of this. So say tonight, we all go out and we eat sushi. And say if you don't like sushi, we eat something you like. And that sushi is contaminated. It's bad sushi. And let's say all of you guys are subluxation free, but I'm subluxated. And we go out and you eat sushi, and all of you guys go home and start vomiting, and I don't. Who's healthy and who's sick?
We are.
You're actually not sick because you're expelling the toxin. I'm actually the sick one because I'm keeping the toxin in me.
Mm-hmm.
Your symptom doesn't indicate if you're healthy or sick. It indicates that you have a symptom and your body's doing something. And you have to ask yourself, it's like another thing, like this one always just drives me up. If somebody has a fever, the fever by definition is raising the temperature of the body. Now, why would the body want a fever? Why would it want increased temperature?
Kill a virus.
Exactly. It wants to increase the speed at which reactions happen. So, a catalyst of reactions is speed. And we learned this in chemistry. If you heat it up, it reacts quicker. The body does the same thing. If we speed it up, it will destroy things quicker. It will get rid of those problems quicker. The body will heal quicker. So, here's the problem. In our, and I'm going to say educated intelligence, we think that if we have a fever, we're sick. We think that if we're vomiting, we're sick. So when I say educated intelligence, what I'm talking about is intelligence that us as a race of humans have decided is what's right and what's good. So we've decided that if we have a symptom, we're sick, and if we don't have a symptom, we're healthy. And I can go through many things that tell us that has nothing to do with it, like cancer. You have no symptom, but you've been growing it for 30 years, and then you find out you have a problem. That doesn't mean you're healthy. Having no symptoms has nothing to do with health. It just means you have no symptoms. So we have this fever, and our body's using it to increase the reaction rate to kill off the bacteria or virus. The other cool thing is the bacteria and viruses that live in us, or can actually get into us, can only live in a small temperature gradient. So the higher the fever, the more it's killing off that virus or bacteria because it can't work correctly. Now, there is a place though where the body will keep going up, but here's the interesting thing. It will never actually hurt you. There's never been one recorded case of hyperthermia, not hyper, high blood or high temperature actually getting you sick. No person will actually get themselves sick and cause brain damage. There's not one recorded case. Now there is hyperthermia due to being in the desert and too much heat going down on you, but nobody has ever had somebody get sick because their temperature goes too high. Because the body will never purposely injure itself because that has an intelligence in it. And that intelligence is what's going to heal you. That intelligence is what's going to take care of things. So I've seen 2 different cases of fever and how it reacts. I've had a person come in. Well, this one was me personally, both of them. I got adjusted. I was feeling kind of nauseous, and I went right up to 105. I had that fever for 20 minutes, and then it broke, and then I was back to normal. Had another person, and they came in. I adjusted them. Well, it's me. They didn't come in. I got adjusted, and I had a fever of 102, and it broke and went right down to nothing right after the adjustment. So if we look at it in symptoms, if I got adjusted and I got a fever, we better give that kid aspirin right away to lower that fever, right? Because we're trying to control the body, even though we don't even know what's right for it. With that person, if we cause that increase in that fever, lots of weird things happen if we try to control it. Have you guys ever heard of Reye's disease? You can only get that from taking aspirin. That's because your body literally starts overreacting because with a fever, it's trying to protect itself. So it's in defense mode, and then it just starts attacking everything. So what I'm showing you is a symptom doesn't indicate health or sickness. It indicates you have a symptom. Now you want to ask a different question. Why do I have this symptom? Is it trying to teach me something? Like I'll see people come in here, I always get a headache when I go home and talk to my spouse. Maybe there's some stuff going on at home that needs to be taken care of, and the headache has nothing to do with anything that I can take care of. There's other ones that you see. Or I have a headache when my menstrual time comes around. Okay, so that can be a hormone-induced headache. What's actually going on? Let's look at the bigger question. What is this symptom telling us? And is the symptom bad? Or is the symptom an indication of something we need to acknowledge and look at and see what's going on? So I'm starting off with this to show you that there's different ways to look at how the body works. If we tell ourselves that symptoms are bad, we will cut things out and drug them to death so we can't feel things. We will numb ourselves. And in numbing ourselves, we don't become aware of what's actually happening, and we don't become aware of how we can heal and how we can actually get back to normal. So, when we look at the body and how it's communicating, the ultimate thing of why those changes happen between adjustment and fever broke and adjustment and fever went away is communication. Because when I was adjusted, the key that happened is that my upper cervicals were taken care of. And a lot of people are told, don't let anybody ever touch your neck. That's, scary, 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 scary. Here's the thing. That's where everything starts. If you don't look at this upper cervical region, specifically the C1, the occiput or the skull, and the C2 region, you're basically taking that doctor and taking away both his hands and say, please fix me. Because this is where everything starts. Everything begins up here. If it can't communicate correctly, you will grow sickness. It's just that simple. Now, is that sickness a too fast or a too slow sickness? Depends on what your body's doing. So if we look at the body and how it's communicating, that's the key to what we're going to look at for time, frequency, and intensity. So if we take the average person, the first subluxation or the first dysfunction in communication starts when they're 1 minute old. What do you think it is? Birth, exactly. So they're born, and the doctor means well, and they get pulled out. Say they don't get pulled out, say they get a vacuum. Maybe those forceps. All of those are very traumatic to the child. So that's the first complication to the communication. Even if they're what's considered a normal vaginal birth, the normal torquing of the baby coming out of the canal can cause issues. I had a little Amish kid I took care of in Michigan that was completely cyanotic or blue. And he had a normal vaginal birth, they considered. What had happened was that top area, that atlas area I was talking about, which controls everything in the brain communicating, was out of alignment. That's why I was blue. We adjusted him and he came back to life. And the whole Amish community came in. It was scary because they were giving me so many muffins. I was getting But that communication is key. So if we look at it and we say, okay, Dr. Josh, I'm coming in, I'm 20 years old, I've never had any problems, and now my neck hurts. It's hard for me when I hear things like this. I have high blood pressure, diabetes, and my big toe hurts, but I'm perfectly healthy, doc. Can you help me out? And it's hard for me. I don't want to correct the people because it's a thought process. They're thinking they're still healthy. There's an extreme. You're either healthy or you're sick. There's no in between. Like there's not a, well, I'm perfectly healthy except for my high blood pressure, doc. That means you're not healthy. That indicates that there's a problem. If you have anything out of alignment, anything from communicating correctly, it's not healthy. And it's hard for people to hear that because they want to believe they're healthy even though they take these drugs, even though they have this surgery, different things like that. So what we're going to look at is the body at birth was subluxated to a birth trauma, which most people have. And then it starts growing a dysfunction. Now let's say that birth trauma caused the head to tilt just a little bit off. Now the body has a thing what's called the righting reflex. So what will happen is it'll tip sideways so that it'll be able to look straight. And this is causing a translation in my thorax or how my body is. So I'm looking straight, and some people might say, well, why don't you put your head straight? And you put your head straight, and then they're like crooked, and they're like, that doesn't look right. And you keep turning. And you'll see pictures of this. People walking around crooked like this. And they'll keep walking and walking and walking. And the ingrained neurological communication is that this is normal. And when most of my patients come in, I look at them and I see, how are you aligned? Is one shoulder higher? Is your head forward or backwards? Are you side to side? How are your hips doing? That alignment indicates your neurological conductivity. It indicates how you're communicating. And so what we have is the brain talking down to all the muscles. And the muscles on one side are stronger because the head's crooked, so it has to pull itself to the side to straighten it up. And so you're walking in and you're crooked, and you go, well, my low back hurts, Doc, and I don't know what did it. I go, okay, let's look at this. We have how many thousands of days of our body being trained to be out of alignment? Thousands. And they want to use me as a pill. I'm supposed to be a one shot in the dark and you're better. And it doesn't work that way. It's a communication issue. So when I come in, what I have to do is communicate to this brain to get these muscles to start firing equally on both sides. And by putting in that specific adjustment at the area that will help them, they'll communicate better. Now that communication will happen because of the stimuli coming from the adjustment. But here's the thing. If we look at a river, and we have a big river and a little river, and there's a Y right here. Which one is the water want to go down more? This little one or this big one?
Big one.
Big one, right? That's pretty simple stuff. Nerves work the same way. The longer you use a nerve, the potentiation or the ability for the nerve to fire will increase. An example of this is called fibromyalgia. Fibromyalgia is the body pain nerves being stimulated so much so that it takes very little stimulus and they get pain. So more you stimulate the nerve, the bigger the nerve actually gets. So if we take nerves like our legs and that sciatic nerve, the one that goes down the back of our leg and controls all the muscles, when that nerve is used every day, that nerve is huge because it literally fires to all the different nerves in the legs and communicates to all the muscles. So the more you fire a nerve, the bigger the cross-section actually gets, and the easier it is for that nerve to fire again. So if that's a pain nerve, you can feel pain easier. If this is communicating to a specific muscle group, it moves easier. Now here's the interesting things. When you become stressed out, your body will become stuck in one side of adaptation or the other. This is right and left brain dominance. It's called the hemisphericity, or a side of how the brain will communicate. When the brain becomes overstimulated, and I talk about this, and this is very simplistic of how it works, but it does work this way. When it communicates and it doesn't communicate correctly, what it's going to do is it's going to lead to one side becoming stronger and the other side becoming weaker. So have you heard men are right-brained and women are left-brained before? No?
No, never. What does that mean?
It's the opposite way around. So women are usually right-brained and men are usually left-brained. Now, what does that mean? We've heard men are usually logical. Women are usually more artistic and emotionally driven. Does that sound about right? And that's a brain dominance. That's only right 80% of the time, though. Because 20% of the time, you'll have men that are right-brained and women that are left-brained. And you see this in society. But what happens here is this. Depending on the side of the brain that you become stimulated based on how you deal with stress, determines how these nerves fire and how you determine on how you can heal. So what that means simplistically is, if you're, say, a female, and you become stressed physically, emotionally, or chemically, you become more dominated by your right brain thinking. So, and if you're a male, and you become stressed physically, chemically, or emotionally, you became more dominant by your left brain thinking. So how do men deal with stressful environments? They become very logical, usually, and become, I want this task done, and what do you need me to do, and become very linear, because that's a left brain thought process. Whereas a female, when she becomes very stressed out, becomes more about connecting and how I feel and what does this actually mean. And that dominance of brain function will dominate how organs communicate and how your body communicates and how your body actually heals. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So if we go back to here, if this is a trained function of how your body's supposed to be in this alignment, and I'm trying to train this new neural pathway, and you become stressed, the stress will cause you to go into, so if a tidal wave of water came down and that's stress, is it going to want to go in the little one or the big one?
The big,
The big one, right? So what does that mean happens? I get stressed out and I go right back to the way I am. And then I adjust you. And I adjust you and I stimulate the brain, and then the new pathway starts taking over because the stimulus is using this new one and not the old one. But because this old one has 10,000 days plus of training, and this one has maybe 100, which one's going to want to go back to what? It's going to want to go back to this old one, right? But the problem is that old adaptation is what led to our problem. That old adaptation is what led to us adapting a specific way, because that's the best way our body could adapt at that point in time. The thing is if we can get you right after you've had a chemical stress, alcohol, drugs, smoking, walking in smog, dealing with bad stuff, we can break that pathway before it becomes dominant. Say it's a physical stress, car accident. And this is why I tell people, a car accident is a huge proprioceptive input. What that means is it literally stimulates the whole body, and whatever position you're in, your body thinks is now normal. So if you're turned and the car accident happened, now your body thinks this is normal. Here's the problem. Can you walk through life like this? No, you can't walk through life like this. You want to go like this. And then you start getting neck pain because your muscles all tight, and you're walking around like this. And then you start getting low back pain because you're walking around like this. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And it's literally that simple. And so if you know anybody, if you've ever had a car accident, please do this. See a chiropractor that day before you go to sleep. If you do that, you're basically wet cement. And I can actually make you quicker, healthier, faster. If you come in and you've had a trained program like this, that car accident literally eradicates the majority of the old stimuli and puts you into a new state. It says, this is the new one. This is so much stimuli. This is what you think is normal. Doesn't matter if you used to be like this. This is normal now. Because it literally hyper-stimulates the brain and teaches it that's what the new normal is. So you have that car accident, you see a doc before you go to bed, and you can have a recovery rate of 1 to 2 weeks instead of 6 months to a year. Because that's usually what I see with people who've had car accidents, is they come in, they were in whatever position they're in, now their body thinks this is normal. And now I have to retrain the brain to think this is normal. And you have to keep stimulating it. So the frequency and the time needed is all based on how stressful your life is. If you have an extremely stressful lifestyle, I can adjust you, and you walk out, and all of a sudden somebody starts yelling at you, and you got to take substances to make yourself feel better. That's going to cause you to start shutting down. Does that make sense? But if you get in a car accident, run to a doc right away. Run to a chiropractor right away. And if you can get in and don't take, and if you can do this, I know sometimes it hurts, don't take drugs, because all the drug does is shut down the nerve from working right. So if you turn off the pain nerve, it can't communicate correctly. If it can't communicate correctly, I'll adjust you, and now it's inhibited. Does that make sense, guys? And if it's inhibited, it won't heal. Turn off the muscle nerve, that's called a muscle relaxant. So take a muscle relaxant because your head's stuck like this and you want to keep moving your head, but you can't move your head because it's stuck like this because you had that car accident. Muscle relaxant will let you move it. You can't feel the pain because the pain nerve's there, but then how's the nerve gonna communicate and say this is what we need to have happen? It's not, because you can't feel the right thing. So the communication doesn't work correctly. So how this works is, say you're the average person, you're not that car accident, but if you're that car accident person, if you can see that person, a chiropractor, before you go to bed, you will literally cut your healing time by 90 to 95%. It's huge. It's literally huge. I'll give you an example. I got in a car accident when I was in school. I was looking to the side. I got rear-ended at 35 miles an hour. I went and saw my doctor 3 times the first day, 2 times the second day, 2 times the third day. And by the 4th day, I got re-scanned and re-x-rays, and I had a perfect alignment, everything, no issues. Now here's the problem. 5 miles or more of a car accident will actually cause ligamentous strain and deformation. But because my body could adapt quick enough, it could pull it back into the right alignment. And that's the key that you want. But if you locked in this position, then what's going to happen is you're going to start having compensations to get through life in this position. So you're stuck to the side, you're going to rotate, and then you're going to try to pull your head straight, and you're going to walk around like this. And then you wonder why your low back starts to hurt you, and your knees start to hurt you, and your feet start to hurt you. It's all from that car accident that happened 10, 15 years ago. Because we grow the problem. And you'll hear crazy things. Like I had a lady come in here yesterday and she said, I heard this crazy thing. I had a person come in, they had 1 disc that was completely decayed and the other 3 were fine. And they were told that was aging. I go, well, if it's normal aging, shouldn't they all be sick? Well, it's just a simple question, shouldn't they? And the answer is, yeah, they should all be sick. The reason the 1 was sick is because you're out of alignment and you kept walking on that out of alignment. It's like a tire. If you use 1 tire out of alignment and 3 are in, what's going to happen to the tires? The 3 are going to be fine, and the 1 that's out of alignment is going to cause problems. That's what arthritis is. Osteoarthritis, or 90% of all arthritis, is an out of alignment issue, and it's completely preventable. The problem is that we, as a society, go to people that treat symptoms and not causes. And if we go to somebody who treats symptom, they turn off the nerves by using drugs, or cut the things out because the nerves being turned off won't work. So if you keep having pain, they'll start cutting things out because you can't feel pain if it's not cut out. Here's the problem with that. You still can. You guys ever heard of phantom pain? It's because your body still sees the limb or organ being there and still tries to stimulate it. And if you can't talk back, it says, bad, look at it, do something. And that's why I see people that come in who have gallbladder pain even though they don't have a gallbladder. That'd be crazy, right? Because what can you do? The gallbladder's gone. So, does that make sense about the car accidents and stuff? So, we're looking at this, and we got 10,000 days, then we got 100 days. Now, here's what we need to do. We need to make, and I'll literally show you how this works. So, we got 1 nerve. That's an ugly nerve. Communicating, and this one has 10,000 days communicating this is how you're supposed to react. And it goes to this other nerve that communicates to the muscles. The new nerve is that big. Each time I adjust you, and I get the nerve to actually increase in size, and this one to decrease in size. The speed to which it can communicate is related to the size, and it's related to what's called myelination, or how much stuff's around. You guys don't need to know that. Simplistically, the more I adjust you, the more I train this nerve to increase in size and then stimulate the region that I need to have stimulated. That's how nerves actually communicate. And as they fire, they'll actually communicate faster and faster and faster. And so, an easy way to look at this is if we have a hose, and we have a fire hose and a garden hose, which one's going to put out the fire quicker? Fire hose, right? Because it's bigger, it can push more fluid. So it can go quicker, everything will work better. Why is it that the bigger one works faster than the little one? It's just easier to move through, right? Less friction, easier to move. The physics comes into this, but also the ability for the nerve to fire or turn on actually decreases. So the bigger it is, it actually decreases in the amount of change that is needed to make it fire. So what that means is, instead of needing 0.65 millivolts, it needs 0.62 millivolts. And you're like, okay, what does that mean? It means it takes less information put into your brain to cause it to react. So it's easier to work. So this is how a trait is trained. You ever heard of muscle memory? That's what muscle memory is it becomes easier and easier and easier and easier and easier and easier to fire it, so you don't even have to think about it and you can just do it. Because remember, if you guys, first time you're trying to drive a car, that was a new memory. And right, and just, all that stuff happens, and dad might be yelling at you, your mom might be yelling at you, don't hit the person, all that stuff happened, right? That's because you were trying to make a new communication. And then as you kept using it, it got better and better and better, and now you don't even think about it. You can drive the car if it's a stick and talk on the phone and have the radio going and everything. And it's literally that.
And you get in a car accident.
Exactly. It's literally that simple. So the reason why I'm going through all of this is because the repetition is needed to heal. If you do not do the repetitive task to fire this nerve, every time you become stressed out chemically, emotionally, or physically, say you're driving down the road and the guy cuts you off, you'll start going back to the old way. Say you have a bad night and you gotta go drink a beer, you go back to this way. Spouse yells at you, go back to this way. Life happens, go back to this way. Show up to work late, go back to this way. And then you wonder why you go to work and I feel like crap. Because you're going back and reverting back to that old mechanism of being. It's causing you to grow that sickness. So the repetitive visits is to change the neurology. And then the neurology, or the firing, changes the muscles, changes the organs, changes the glands. And this is why chiropractors can say, I adjust you and I've watched cancer go away. I adjust you and I've watched diabetes go away. Did I cause it? No. Did the body do it? Hell yeah. The body took care of it. We open up the communication loop. And when the communication loop is working correctly, you guys do miracles for us. Literally miracles. Like we see people who've had seizures for years, like 30 plus years, and all of a sudden they don't have seizures anymore. Or we see people that have been told that their bladders will never work. And now their bladder works. And they've been told stupid things like they're too old. Like being 60 is too old for the bladder to work. Really? What kind of crazy thoughts are this? If that was true, then everybody at that age should not have a bladder that works. Because they're just lies that we're told and we just accept it to be true. And I can go down the 5 lies, and I'll probably do a talk on that, of the 5 lies that you get told. But the big thing I want you guys to take away is the repetition is to grow the communication. So if you've been growing a problem for 20, 30, 40 years, the repetitious number of times that you come is to stimulate the nerve so that it fires, and it fires easier. And the easier it fires, the easier you will stay in that state of health. Does that make sense? So that's the repetition. Then the time is to deal with how long have you been training yourself. So we get it to fire, and how long you've been training yourself to be sick. Most people will come in, and this blows me away. I'll hear this every once in a while. Somebody will come in, they'll be 30 years old, and say, I've never been in a car accident, I've never had a fall, I've never had a trip, I've never hurt myself. I go, what world do you live in? Really, if you learned how to walk, you have fallen on your butt at least 5,000 times. And you tell me you never hurt yourself? Repeated falling. If you're a little boy, you're like sliding down the stairs going clunk, 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 clunk. You jump out of bed and hit your head on stuff. And you do all these things and you say, I never hurt myself, doc. I go, okay, you didn't hurt yourself, but you trained yourself to be sick over hundreds and hundreds of days. And that's the big key, is that we have to look at, when do we want to start having our people healthy? When do we want to start taking care of people?
Day after birth?
Exactly, and that's why I adjust. The earliest person I've ever adjusted was a baby who's 5 minutes old. I was literally at the birth, and you go, why would you adjust a baby? They don't have any pain. Exactly. We don't want them to grow pain. We don't want them to grow dysfunction. We don't want them to grow issues. We want to prevent it. I had one friend, and his child was perfectly healthy for what they knew. It was a chiropractic baby. And at age 18, he had a major football issue. He got hit in the side. And they went in and they did a CAT scan on him. And they said, your child must have been sick his whole life. And they go, no, what are you talking about? He's perfectly healthy. He only has one kidney. His body literally adapted so much so that he could run on one kidney and be perfectly healthy. Because his body adapted, because he had been adjusted since birth, because the neurology had been trained. So if you look at chiropractic as the same as tuning an instrument, if the instrument is really out of tune, it sounds like crap, right? Nobody wants to listen to that, and that's the body being sick. As we tune that instrument up, it gets finer and finer and finer, and sounds better and better and better, and it takes less and less and less. So in the beginning, when we're tuning your nerve system, it takes a lot of work to change it, and a lot of time. But as we get it closer and closer and closer to being at that point where it can react correctly to every single thing that happens to it, it takes less and less for me to do. I haven't told a lot of people this lately. My ultimate goal is for you guys all to come in and me not to have to adjust you. What does that mean though? What does it mean if I don't have to adjust you? That means for the week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, whatever it is, you've been in proper alignment and you don't need any tuning. Now, in our society, that's a big hope for me, because you drive down the street and somebody does something that's going to put you back into the old way of doing. You turn on the television and the world's ending. Like, I just had a patient come in today. Did you hear somebody got shot and this and this and this and this? And do we want to get stuck in that and stuck reverting back to this? And the thing that I haven't talked about is that if you have been stuck in that stress mode, your body will actually become addicted to the feeling of stress and the stress hormones. And that addiction to that stress will cause you to keep causing that stress to come into your life, because it makes you feel euphoric and relaxed, because you get to tell people about the bad thing, and then you get to hear about the bad thing, and then you get that little rush. But that also causes you to go into your old states of being and not able to adapt. So when we look at this overall, the reason the times that we see may take years or months is because it's taken you tens of years and hundreds of months to get there. And that trained process takes time to get rid of. The repetition is the way it is because we have to keep stimulating this nerve so it can grow quicker, and this old one will die. Because here's the cool thing. The cool thing about neurulation or nerve growth is when you start using this new one, this old one dies. So an example of this, can you remember your combination of your lock when you were in grade school? Some people can, but most people don't. They forget it because they have to remember a new one. And that new memory is new growth here. And the more you use it, the more you can memorize it. And that's the actual communication. And the same thing happens with the body. As we have it communicate longer and longer and longer, you'll learn to be this instead of this. And that memory and that repetitive input is what I'm looking at. Now the thing is, the time it takes for people to get there is based on how many days you've been there. If you've only just had an acute trauma the other day, it won't take me very much. But if you have that problem and you've been growing it since you were a little kid, it's going to take some time. And if we see decay on your x-rays, that indicates you've had it so long that you've actually caused things to fall apart. Does that make sense, guys? Feels like I'm beating this to death, but am I talking from different angles? Is that working? So the takeaway I want you to have is your health, your vitality, and your ability to thrive in life is up to you. You can determine if you want to work on yourself, invest in yourself, and keep growing health, or to say, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Now, if it ain't broke, don't fix it is what our society is in right now. These are the people that are getting into their 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, and now their bodies are falling apart, and they don't know what to do because they never took care of the problem when it was a little issue, like a little cavity. They wait until their whole tooth rotted, and then they have to do the big intervention. instead of this simple step. If you take care of it in the beginning and invest a small amount of money in the beginning of your life, you don't have to invest all your money at the end of your life. And if you don't believe me, start looking into what causes bankruptcies in our country. And I believe it's between 40 to 60% is all the last 6 months of life, people just trying to stay alive. All their money goes out. So you can either spend it on that or invest a small amount of money up front on your health, and then you can use all that and play with your grandkids and play with your children and do the things you love to do. So it's really up to you and what you want to do. And I know I'm speaking to the choir and I'm telling you guys some things that you probably already know, but I want you to understand that you're empowered by taking care of yourself, by knowing that you ultimately heal yourself. So the big thing you can also do is try to limit those chemical, emotional, and physical stresses. By limiting them, it makes it easier for me to keep this in alignment. Keep that new neural communication staying at the highest possibility. Because the longer it stays that way, the more it becomes your dominant, and when it's your dominant, you stay healthy. How do you become sick? You gradually keep thinking it's okay, and I hear this all the time. Well, I only have a little shoulder pain, a little elbow pain, and my pancreas is a little sick. It sounds sick to me, buddy. Oh, but I've had it for so long, it's never going to go away. So you got different people at different stages. You got a small facet of society, roughly 10 to 15%. They're called early adapters. They will do stuff because they know it's right and they want to get rid of it. Then you have other people, and this is the majority of society. They have a problem, but they don't have time. I'm busy. It's not that bad. And they're going to wait until it becomes a big issue. If you're that person, you're going to be in what's called acute care system, which means you're going to go see the medical doctor and you're going to have surgeries and you're going to have drugs given to you. No questions about that, because you're not doing any preventative. And then you have the last bit of society, and these are people that have been sick for so long they're resigned. And they've seen everybody and they can't get better. Or they've decided that. Because I've seen everybody and everybody's taking care of me and I've seen the best blah, 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 blah. I've heard this many times. I'm usually the last person people come to. I wish I was the first. Because I do the least invasive anything and we get huge results. Because we work with what controls your body, which is the nerve system. And so if you're that person that's resigned, that's the hardest person for me to deal with, because they've decided they're going to be sick. They've decided they're not going to get better. And they've had it for so long it becomes normal. And it's funny that your body forgets about things really quickly, and you guys do as well. You'll come in, I had people come in who could barely walk. And in 3 months say, Doc, you know what? I don't know what you've done for me. I think I'm done. And I go, you're walking now. You can walk and you can move your arm and you can do these things now. You just forget. Because where we are becomes so stagnant and normal to us that we just think it's normal to have pain. And if you talk to a lot of people, you go, do you think it's normal to have pain? They'll go, yeah. Like you hear on TV, normal everyday headaches. Mm-hmm. There is no such thing as a normal everyday headache. That doesn't exist. If you have a headache, that's your body saying there's a problem. Do something about it. Don't drug it down so you can't feel it anymore. So the answer is we slowly change and then it just becomes normal. Like we slowly gain weight and then all of a sudden we're overweight. Or we slowly get thin and then all of a sudden we're in shape. It's a gradual thing. Our bodies don't change drastically. And so when people come in, they have to understand that I am not an intervention person. I have to literally change the way you think for you to understand that it's going to take time for you to grow health, because it took a lot of time for you to grow sickness.
Given that that's all true, how is it that you feel so much better even after the first session?
Excellent. So what happens is this. There's a thing called the gate control theory of pain. So let's go to the brain here, and let's have this blue one be pain. P equals pain. And this one is proprioception. Well, let's make it easier, because that's another P. We'll put feeling. Now, you ever had the coach tell you, walk it off? And you start walking and you feel better, right? That's because the feeling nerve, or the proprioceptive nerve, goes to the brain faster than the pain nerve. The pain nerve fires slower. That's why people say, when I stop moving at the end of the day and lay down, it really hurts.
Oh,
And it really hurts because this one isn't moving anymore. So what happens is this. As I adjust you, we stimulate this, and that new pathway will start taking over, and the pain one won't be firing as much. The other thing that happens is the pain nerve is stimulated by, say, a proprioceptive body being out of imbalance, or it can be a chemical imbalance because the pituitary gland isn't communicating correctly. And when we adjust you, when we do, say, cranial adjusting, we can actually cause the pituitary to communicate correctly. So one thing that happened, I can stimulate it, that'll decrease the pain. The other thing that can happen, I can adjust it, and the pain fiber will go away. The stimulation from that will go away. The other thing that can happen is that we adjust you and we upregulate the hormone balance in your body so much so that you regulate your dopamine is produced correctly. The big thing that I see with a lot of people, and the reason why a lot of people say they get euphoric after their adjustments, is this. Your body is so smart that what it does is if you have a chronic pain, it will produce natural endorphins that will stop you from feeling as bad as you need to. So it'll literally pump up your endorphins. So what happens, I adjust you, this pain signal stops firing, and you still have those endorphins being produced. And you go, wow, I feel awesome. I want to feel this way all the time. And your body goes, well, you're not gonna, because we have to down-regulate it, but hormones react slower than sensations. So this one is working on seconds. Hormones, we're working in hours. That's why if you take a drug, it takes hours until it kicks in. So you get rid of that sensation of pain, your hormones are still really high, the dopamine, basically all the different happy hormones, and the pain sensation's gone, you feel really happy. That answer your question?
Yep.
Cool. Any other questions? We're good? Rock and roll? All right, we'll take care of you guys. I want to end this with, and as I always do, is that if you guys could do something that would change somebody's life, like give them a little thought, a little seed that would make them actually radically change and be a better person, is that something you'd like to do? Would you want to be somebody who's a catalyst for a change in somebody's life where they feel so thankful that every time they say you, they give you a hug and say thank you so much? What I ask for you though is if you notice anybody suffering from pain, depression, anxiety, anything, have them check us out. Because if they check us out, we can show them a different perspective of how people take care of things. A different perspective of how you heal. That it's not about treating the symptom, it's about treating the cause. And when you find the cause, you can radically change people's lives. Because the cause is that faulty communication. It's what causes everything to fall apart. Because we all know communication is key. If you want anything to work well, you gotta make it communicate right. If it doesn't, it'll fall apart. So give that friend or family member a little nudge and let them know that the initial consult, I do not charge anything for. They can come in, they consult where I see if they have an issue, I don't charge anything for. That's basically 25 minutes to a half an hour of my time that I don't charge for. If they're in the right place, then yes, we maybe have to do an exam. There is a fee, but I make it so easy to get in here. It's just crazy because I want to see miracles in your guys' lives. I want to see you guys be such uplifters that everybody goes, I want to be like him. You know, I want to see people being in the community where you just do something as easy as say, hey, maybe you should go see Dr. Josh, and all of a sudden you're, you know, the guy that everybody wants to talk to because you changed that person's life. Because I don't want the accolades, I want you guys to have them. Because I want you guys to be the ones that change people's lives. Thank you.
Thanks.